Good evening. As I look down at this camera, I feel like I should probably find a more stable place to do these videos where the lighting doesn't make me look like some kind of evil underlord. Anyway, let's chat today about overstimulation. I want to draw an interesting analogy. So, when we were evolving, well, I mean, we're always evolving, but say 10,000 years ago, which it's generally considered that our machines have not changed so much since then. We're exposed to a certain amount of food. Far less than we are to today. And we evolved an appetite that was suitable for that for that food availability. So we evolved to find foods tasty in certain amounts. So if foods are very high, the higher calorie foods, it was like, oh yeah, that's really good because there's not much of them around. Right, they don't exist that much in nature. And so our hunger mechanisms were built for our environment, meaning that we ended up in, kind of good level of good, like weight and health. But today there's so much more food available than we evolved for, but yet we've got these hunger mechanisms which were built for a food environment that was much more scarce than what we're in today. And so that means, left uninhibited, we go crazy and we become obese. But the thing about obesity is it's very obvious. You know when you're getting fat. It's clear. The damage is obvious. So we rein ourselves in to a degree. Obviously there is obesity, but, there's that check in place. If I draw a comparison with information consumption, so we evolved to be able to digest a certain amount of information. When new information comes in, we process it, kind of echoes in our mind a bit, we, figure it out, we connect the dots with other things we've learned before, we make new connections. And the amount of new information that we were exposed to back in the day was kind of, aligned with our ability to process that information. But now, we are flooded with information, so much more information than we were back then. But we don't have this feedback mechanism of the obesity loop, which means that we just keep adding more and more and more information. The feedback loop, I suppose, is overstimulation and burnout, but for some reason this doesn't have the same obvious physical impact that overeating does. It's more like it scrambles our brains, and then the issue is that when we overstimulate, when we consume more information, what happens is, and I've noticed this through my meditation, is that you sit and in your quiet moments your brain sort of churns and the information kind of plays itself back, and you figure things out. Like in your quiet moments, things just churn and you make sense of stuff. And I think of that, it's akin to digestion in the process of eating. You eat, and then your body figures out what to do with the food. You consume information, and your brain works out what to do with it, how to make sense of it. But the problem is, we start in our quiet moments now. We feel this information churning, and yet it's so fast and there's so much of it that we don't really like it. It's a bit painful. It's like, God, there's so much shit going on in my head. So what do? You distract yourself by consuming even more information. You beat the problem with more of the problem. You solve your indigestion by eating more food. And we have completely spiraled out of control in this respect. And we're losing ourselves. Because when we vacillate from one new distraction to another, we spend no time churning, no time figuring anything out for ourselves. We live in this superficial life of of nothing really meaning anything, nothing going deep. Your brain's flitting here and there. You lose your sense of personality. It just feels like life's passing you by. And it's really dramatic. I just did a little research, and it seems I'm not 100% sure on the statistics on this, but there's a study suggesting we consume 5,000 ads per day. That we now consume over 70 gigabytes of data per day. That we spend over 11 hours a day consuming media. About 2.5 hours a day on social media. Compared to our ancestral levels of stimulation, this is the equivalent, I think, of us having a 500,000 calorie diet, literally those kind of levels. But also, not only are we having a 100,000 calorie diet, we're doing no exercise either. By exercise meaning, taking time to just allow ourselves to process. Now, I'll temper that in. I think the human brain is incredibly adaptive. We can learn to somehow cope with these things to an extent, but only to an extent. You get used to the chaos. But we've really just lost our depth, I think, in this day and age. So when people say to me a lot that I'm a bit nuts for cutting down how much information I consume, I try to not really read the news, social media, TV, I like everything really. But I just looking at it in my own brain, it's like I do a lot of meditation, and when I consume a lot of information, I'm sitting there in meditation, and my brain's just whirring with this and that and the other. But where I don't, there's a certain peacefulness that comes in when you're kind of churned, and more interesting connections can fire at that stage as you go deeper. And I'd really like the world to find themselves snap out of this madness. I think it's the worst problem in the world today. I think it's the source of all the other problems is our lack of centering, our lack of self-knowledge, self-awareness. we lose ourselves in just going from one thing to the other, and the world's just passing us by. And we just without being in touch with ourselves, to use a cliche term, you just, what are you? Not through root. What is it? You lose yourself, and then you get lost in busyness, and you can't really function. Okay, there's a pretty damning picture. I kind of want to talk about this in my talk, but I don't want it to be too miserable. I'll think of some way of making it a bit more lighthearted. Toodles.